How you doing, guys? Eric from rulethwasteland.com. Let's see if this audio is working. Perilous times out there for sure. I was thinking the other day, I was watching the trailer for the new Masters of the Universe movie, and I'm sure it's terrible. But I have some like almost 40-year trauma related to improperly the IP abused from that. And I was thinking about how I always had me and my brother had all the figures because they're awesome, and I always had the bad guys, and he always had the good guys. It made it easier to get all the figures for sure. But so I was thinking like, why did I always like all the bad guys? It wasn't just He-Man, it was everything else. I always liked the bad guys. And sure they look cooler. Um, but the one thing that all the bad guys have is conviction. Never wavering. That's what makes them good bad guys. If they're waffling about what they wanted to happen or they weren't absolutely dedicated to their goals, it would be a terrible villain. So they're always completely unwavering in their conviction. So have I been. And now we have $100. It's insane to me that this is what now $10,000 for this 100-ounce bar. And as promised, this is the month that we have passed $100 silver. And by the time I could even make a live stream, it's $110. So I will be giving away to my Patreon people by the end of this. I got one out of generic, a copy of a Walking Liberty commemorative, and almost exactly an ounce in some dimes. And of course, the usual already mentioned prizes of the knife, and I think the fire blanket was the other one. So if you guys weren't already in, there's only like what, 12 people on there? You guys got a good shot at getting these. That will be by the end of this episode. But obviously, the big talk of everything is silver and gold prices. The crazy thing to me is, like I said, this is absolutely insane. I bought Cutlery Lover, if you guys are familiar with him, did another sale of some silver not too long ago, and that's where I got some of these dimes. And that was at 80. It was at $80 when I bought it from him, pretty much right at spot. So that means like he got a better deal and I got a better deal. Had to dig into the poker bankroll because I didn't really have enough money for it. So I'm sure that'll come back to bite me. But it was crazy to me because when I got the package in the mail, I was like panicked for a second because it was so light. I was like, "Oh, this can't be it." And it had like my brain hasn't even adjusted yet for how little like a few thousand ounces of silver really is these days. It's pretty insane. And as nice as it is to see stuff that you own go up in value, it is not good omen for the. I should do this too since we're rocking. I got this. I remember I got this back in the day for like $80, I think. It might have been like 40 bucks. And now it's like hundreds of dollars just in melt value. Hell yeah, rocking the silver. It's 100 grams silver chain. Speaking of Master Universe, I got my Skeletor guy here that I got not too long ago. This, you guys probably remember, this was like November. I bought this at the local coin shop for 54 bucks an ounce. It's doubled in like 2 months. And I don't think it's going to stop as long as we keep having this gap between the Shanghai Silver Exchange and the Western markets is going to keep going up because people are just going to be able to make money on their arbitrage, and that's what I've been telling people online is that obviously the underlying issue going on here is the downfall of the fiat system, specifically the US dollar. But that's not why silver has doubled in 60 days, because when that really starts to break, people haven't even started fleeing the debt markets yet. Not really. When people really decide that they can't have their wealth in US dollars or dollar denominated assets anymore, like, I mean, it's who knows what's going to happen. Like I said, you probably won't even be able to effectively price gold and silver in US dollars because it'll just go no ask. Like people like me and you who have some, what are we going to sell it for when you see it? It might be doubling every day. You know what I mean? So what we're seeing right now with silver specifically is just people, the actual price discovery when you find out that, the global markets are kind of finding out that physical is not the same thing as paper promises. And when any entity, in this case, Eastern and specifically China, decided that they want physical silver, then they figured out they have to pay a little bit more then like the price of silver, and all that's really doing is proving that the silver price is not the real price. That's the price for paper instruments that don't represent the actual amount of silver. And it's a pretty bleak situation out there, dire rather situation, if you're looking at the physical silver markets and how much industrial is actually used up. It's like something like it's like half the demand. So all the demand is actually outpacing supply, and the industrial demand is a huge chunk of that. And so that's why we are skyrocketing. So I think that I've seen people like Market Sniper, Francis Hunt, and a few other people say that, and Michael Oliver are claiming that silver will go into the middle, three digits, two to 300, $400, somewhere in that range. I know before there's any sort of issue. And like honestly, at that point, like I said, I'm keeping this for the reason I have physical gold and silver to begin with is for currency risk because I know that the currency situation is disintegrating. I know it's going to happen eventually, and I have my exit points for that specifically with regards to, Dow gold ratio and things like that. But if we do see a spike up to 250 to $300 range, I'll probably sell off a little bit of it just to take it because I mean, I don't think it'll stay there in the medium term. I think it'll go up probably and then it'll come back down, who knows what. Um, so I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be okay to take a little bit of profits at that point. But even if it goes up to, 150 and then comes back down to 90, like that doesn't change anything. I don't think it's going to go back below 100 anytime soon because I think if you were just to actually figure out what is the real price of silver when it comes down to how much of it is in the ground, what are the mines making, how much people actually need, all that stuff. Um, it should probably be somewhere in the 150 to $300 range would be my guess, especially with the amount that they're using for all this new technology, all the military industrial stuff, all the EV stuff, all the solar stuff, etc. Um, yeah, how is some of you guys getting some crazy weather up there? Does feel good to be a gangster. I wonder if any of the old silver mines in the Southwest will be worth reinvesting or revisiting. Yeah, I mean that's another thing is that the mines themselves will be much more profitable, even if prices do not go up in gold and silver, but they just maintain. I mean, like I said, this silver has doubled in 60 days or whatever. So all the silver mines have been operating on and profitable at silver at the 30 to $50 range. So now that it's doubled, they haven't even really realized the benefits of that yet. And I know some people like Rick Rule saying he sold like 80% of his physical silver and put that into the miners because just for that reason that even if the silver price doesn't keep going up, but just stays relatively elevated, the miners are going to be a lot more profitable and then he can make money that way. But like I said, I've always had my targets for getting rid of it, and it has to do, and the gold silver ratio is one of them too. Like if silver really gets out of whack in terms of gold, I would trade. I wouldn't sell, but I would trade. But if it get, and then once we get to certain points with the ratio of gold and silver to Dow and S&P, then a bit and land. That's just one way. It's not that I'll necessarily spend all of it on stocks, but that'll be a good way to identify a point that it's good to rebalance basically the portfolio. Because if you just buy a bunch of gold and silver now and then hold on to it completely through whatever the new transition is into the new currency, it will preserve your wealth. But I think if you transfer it at the right times, you can really magnify that and actually have like enormously outsized gains. Um, than if you just held on to it the entire time. But there's nothing wrong with holding on to it the entire time if all you're trying to do is preserve wealth. But I think just like we're seeing now, like you can do a lot more than preserve if you're a little savvy about watching how it relates to other real assets. Like I was saying, I would focus on like agricultural land, other commodities, companies that are actually productive, not just random tech companies. Like I wouldn't just buy a share of the S&P or the Dow or whatever. I'm using those ratios because I think that's a useful metric to compare historically where we're at in terms of valuations. But I wouldn't just go out and buy an entire share because so many companies just don't do anything and they're not actually real. They're just as fake and gay as anything else these days. And a lot of these tech companies are in that boat. They're all bloated and they're not really productive or as productive as they're pretending to be. But there's plenty of companies that do real things out there. Mining companies. There's uh, companies that actually physically make things. Um, Agricultural companies, stuff like J&J and all these, stuff that pays a good dividend and have been around for a while. Oil companies. I think oil probably will be insanely cheap relative to gold and silver over the next year or two, and then it'll be worth, maybe buying into some of that. Who knows? Chinese is saying all your metal are belong to us. Yeah, and I've been telling people that for a long time that the Chinese are focusing on real assets. They realize what's going on here, and it's so weird to me because I have some friends that are just stuck on the fact that like the things that China are bad at, and they're like, "Oh, China's fake. China's these real estate problems." I'm like, "Look, if you look at all the issues with our economy, you can make the situation seem pretty damn bleak for us, and I think it is. And obviously for them, they're not in a good situation either. But I mean, and this is what I always said. I remember on one of the JJ's live streams I had where we were talking about that, where we were specifically disagreeing on where China's going to be in all this. And my point was that, like, I don't think China's going to be in a better spot necessarily than they are now. Just like I would not be in a better spot during an apocalypse than I am now. Um, but when you compare, to my neighbor or something who might be making, $300,000 a year in fiat dollars, like we're both going to be in a worse spot than we are now in the apocalypse. But I'm going to be in a much, much better spot than he is because I have the real things that I'm actually going to need, like the food, like the ammo, like the water filters, like the water itself, like the antibiotics, like all that stuff. So just because I'm saying that I will be in a much better position than my neighbors, it's still going to be a SHTF scenario. I'm still going to be in a dire situation. I will not have the same standard of living that I have now, etc. But I will survive and I will have the things that I need because I focus on the real world resources, actual first order wealth that comes up out of the ground. And that's what China is doing right now. They're stockpiling real things. They're stockpiling copper and gold and silver and focusing on energy. And are they going to be in a good position, better than they are now when this whole system starts to dissolve? Hell no. They're going to be in really shitty situation, just like we will. But they're focusing on having the things that they're actually going to need, so they might actually be able to survive it, and they probably will be in a better situation uh, than we will for the short term because we don't do any of that anymore. Now, the good thing long term is that the United States is one of maybe three, probably only two countries in the world that are like true autarkies, that are truly capable of existing purely from their own production, like have all the things that they need to really survive as like a first world country or modern country. All the resources, and the reason we can't do that now is because we haven't built out the infrastructure, or we've let it molder basically to actually build and refine all these things, like the manufacturing and the refining. But we have all of the natural resources that we need to exist without basically any inputs, maybe minor little weird things here and there that we don't have, some small minerals and stuff. And the only other one that really is in that position is Russia. And they're kind of in the same position as far as that as we are, where they don't necessarily do all the refining and the production that China and Southeast Asia does a lot of that, but they have all the resources. So in the long term, we're in a position to supply almost everything that we need as a country, the energy, the food, etc., a lot of the minerals. But as of right now, we don't have the ability to actually do anything with it. You know what I mean? Like we still have to ship all that stuff up to make it into something. We don't make any of the stuff here. So in the long term, that's good for us. In the short term, we will be in a very bad spot because we don't make anything. And if China is stockpiling, they not only do they make all the stuff, but they're stockpiling the actual raw materials that they need. They're going to be in a much better position in the initial stages of this collapse of the fiat system. But they're not going to be better off than they are now. It's never been what I'm saying. But in relative terms, they will be better off than us. And they may be the best off in the world for a short period of time. Gina G. Berry says, where would you sell your silver? Is there a way to sell or buy it under the table like illegal fireworks? I mean, there's always a way to buy and sell stuff under the table, but I mean, that's just going to depend on your ability to find a buyer in your area and cash and whatever. The options for like not illegal selling it, or you could, like I said, you could always find another person. There's gold and silver shows, there's coin shows you can do. You could even do stuff on Craigslist or whatever, or not Craigslist, I'm dating myself, but like Facebook Marketplace or whatever. It's dangerous. Um, Definitely would want to be careful, but for small amounts, it's possible. Pawn shops, coin shops. I've sold to AppMex before. You can mail it in. It's really there's refineries that some of them you can sell to directly. So China may have to sell off their silver if they keep having terrible floods. Yeah, maybe. Twig says, "What's up, Eric? 9.5 inches of snow here. 105 is believable, is unbelievable. Yeah, it's crazy. That's some crazy snow. And right now, yeah, we're at 109, I think, right now. You see, and so gold went up like $100. Gold has been kind of just chugging along in the background. It's $5,092 right now, and silver is 108. Pretty wild times. So, like I said, if we get into the 250 range, I'm definitely going to sell off a chunk just for because it'll probably dip down at some point, and then maybe buy it back, or I might even just buy gold, depending on what the ratios are. But we're still not at that historically imbalanced. I mean, we're still imbalanced when it comes to the gold and silver ratio in terms of historically. Like anything under 30-ish, 35 to 30-ish, I would be maybe looking to start balancing more towards an equal amount of gold and silver in terms of dollar amounts. But because right now it's still 50 to 1 or just under. So 5,100 divided by 108. Yeah, 47. Sorry, I'm a little bit stuffy today. I got some kind of consumption, but wild times for sure. It's definitely weird to see. And I'm just going to be keeping my eye on the Shanghai exchanges because as long as that number is anything above the COMEX prices and the US spot price, silver is not going to go down. Because why would it? As soon as it'll go down, people just from Asia will come over and arbitrage it. And we still have not seen the true shakeout of how much this physical market has been distorted by paper. And that's literally what we're seeing now. So like the silver's been going up like gold because of the risk, global risk, currency risk, counterparty risk, all that people are going to, risk off assets. But the reason silver specifically has like doubled in the last month or two is not solely related to that. It's mostly related to the rush for physical. People are realizing how important it is that this is irreplaceable. Gold is not irreplaceable. People don't actually use gold. Like if gold disappeared off the face of the earth right now, like every ounce of it, very little would change in terms of our life. Like there's some medical and space related technology and stuff that they use that for, but if silver disappeared off the face of the earth, that would be hugely problematic for most tech related things. Might not even be able to do most of it. It is the most conductive, most reflective element, and it's used for a huge host of important technological processes. And most of them, when they're used, you don't get it back, at least not in any realistic price. For stuff to be recovered or worth like mining landfills for 50 cent or, I don't know, grams of copper that are in some of these electronic devices, it would be you'd have to be probably thousands plus dollars an ounce to justify that. Gina G. Beer says, how much is that bar worth? Well, this is a 100-ounce bar, and an ounce is $108. So it's over $10,000. Pretty wild. Wild times. I like the poured ones too, more than the struck ones, but the struck ones have some cool, that reflective. Forged in the heart of a dying star, and now it's sitting on my desk along with this useless stuff. And someone, I was watching a video the other day, I forget who it was, who was saying, like, when it comes down to it, if one promise is worthless, what is a million promises? How is that any better? It's not. It's all just the same worthless crap. Copper will be the next big mover, Forbidden Planet says. Look for copper to hit $50 a pound within a 10-year time frame. It's interesting because copper is highly related to like how well the economy is doing because it's used for a lot of so building anything is if the economy is growing, copper will be more expensive. Now it is going to go up also because as the currency dies because everything that is not the dollar, any real thing will. But I don't think that copper will probably keep pace with gold and silver just for that reason. Because as we get into this, the economy is probably going to not be doing well at all. And things like new house builds and all this other stuff, and people buying cars and all this other stuff is not going to be maintained at the same level as it is now. So in nominal terms, copper definitely will go up in price and it might hit $50 a pound within 10 years for sure. But at that point, gold may be 50,000. You know what I mean? Like if we really, there's no telling what we're going to get to if you really start to see people fleeing, or not if, when you really start to see people fleeing the debt markets. And I mean, like that's why in Zimbabwe and Weimar, you see trillions of dollars are possible. Now, I don't think that that's going to happen because I don't think that the economy can really handle that level of disintegration right now in the way that we could back then. People are less self-sufficient. I think that they'll switch to some sort of new form of currency faster than that, some sort of new, um, most likely digital. And that was an interesting thing that I keep hearing from people like Rafi Farber and Phil Lowe and everything they're talking about. I really disagree with them about people's reaction to um like a new whenever they come out with this new currency and saying like it's going to have to be based on gold because of reasons. And I think the most important thing to remember about society at large is that there isn't one in 100 people that truly understands what's even going on right now. And when things start to break, they're just going to parrot whatever random news talking head excuse come just like with 2008, any other financial thing they have like, oh, well, we all know, like looking back, they all know why this happened. And even though no one fucking prepared for it, um, it seems so obvious now, and they're going to have all the reasons, but they don't know even not probably not one in like I said, 50 to 100 people could even tell you how money works now and what the difference is between gold and silver and why it matters. And so when the currency really starts to collapse, they're not going to suddenly start understanding how the system works. It's going to be worse. So yes, gold and silver are going to be massively valuable compared to any system, but they're obviously going to be able to get away with making some kind of new system and they'll come out and they'll say like this worked because of this and now it works because of that and it'll be crappy and worse, but they will just come up with a new system and it doesn't necessarily have to be based on gold. It'll probably have to be based on or at least pretended to be based on commodities or something. It can't be purely fiat again just for the global markets because there's enough entities worldwide that understand how it works that they can't just do the exact same thing over again. But this idea that it's going to have to be based on gold and silver because the gig will be up kind of thing, I don't buy because no one knows what's going on and no one even knows how that's why it's failing. So why would an average person who doesn't even know why the currency's failing suddenly understand that, oh, this needs to be based on gold? No, they're going to say, what can I go down to the store and use? And it's not going to be a silver bar. And just interestingly enough, with Weimar Republic, when they had to end their massive inflation, it wasn't because they didn't base it on real things. They based it on, or they didn't base it on gold and silver, rather. They based it on like the land. They said like this is now the new currency that we're going to make all of a sudden is a share of the country. And so there was like a fixed amount, so we can't inflate it. So that's all they really came out and said was like, this one, don't worry, this one can't be inflated. But you couldn't redeem it. You couldn't go redeem your chunk of land. So it was just as useless. You just got a new promise that it wouldn't be adulterated quite as quickly. And because the current system was shoveling around wheelbarrows full of cash on the daily, people willingly jumped into anything that was even remotely better. And I think that goes to show you that they will do the same thing again. And that doesn't mean that they're wrong about how gold and silver will perform or why it's better to have it and yada yada yada. But there's just no way in my mind that we're just going to go back to a purely gold standard. It just doesn't, it's just not going to happen. They don't need to. They can get away with doing a shittier version and they will. Someone said, "What is?" Sorry about that. I'm a little stuffy. What is in the orange can behind your left shoulder on the shelf? This is a little fire extinguisher for like kitchens and stuff like that. But you can, yeah, I think these are fun to have around. These are even smaller fire extinguishers, and these I think are great for taking if you would need to get in like a car kit or some kind of civil unrest loadout because people like to use things like Molotov cocktails and all sorts of nasty stuff. And that combined with keeping some of these fire blankets around and get you a make you be able to put the fire out. Speaking of fire blanket giving stuff away, if you guys weren't watching the beginning, like I said, the month that silver hit 100, I'll be giving away two to my Patreon subscribers who were at the beginning of the month. So let's do that real quick, and then I can get some more questions before I get too stuffy and snarf all over the place. So let's go. Let's see. I have my wheel wheel picker. And then we got our Patreon sheet here. There's actually slightly fewer people. We're only going up to 146 this time. All right. Let's see what we got. You guys can, I need to open that for you, don't I? Share. So this is going to be for the Walking Liberty copy silver round. All right. Can you guys see that? Spinny, 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 spinny. 82. That is going to be Dennis C, looks like. Dennis C. And okay, now I'm going to take that one off. Um, so we'll exclude those numbers from the next one. So Dennis C got that one. Next we're going to do the coins here. It's almost exactly an ounce as well. I think it's just slightly over actually for this one. So let's see what we got. $132. So 132 is Templar Survivor. Got the other ounce. So let's put those in there as well. And then we can. Now we're going to do the another one of these knives. So let's see what we got here. This is for the mossy oak knife. Number 6. That would be Ed. Ed Mather. Got the knife. Congratulations. So let's see. If we can pop that in there. And then next up, we got the fire blanket, the last prize. Let's see what we got. $60. So 60 is John H. So John H has the fire blanket. So congrats, guys. Woo! And hopefully we'll be at 200 before you know it. Maybe I'll give away another one at 200. We'll see. No promises yet. It's getting a bit steep. Let's see what else we got. The government will get rid of the fiat currency for semi-fiat. Yeah, that's kind of what I agree. Tend to agree. Um, because like I said, it's true that they won't be able to just go completely into like, oh, that one's dead. Now let's start using this new one that is no different. They're going to have some kind of excuse. But my point is that it's not going to have to really be a great excuse. That nobody knows what the fuck is going on with money now. And when it starts breaking, just like with anything else you see around the world, ask people's opinions about why any of this stuff is happening. They're going to be completely misinformed, uninformed, wrong, brain dead, what ideologically, stilted, whatever. And that's not suddenly going to change. So they're not suddenly going to accept and understand. In general, they might start seeing that, oh, the fiat has to be something. It can't just be promises. But that's not necessarily going to lead to only gold and silver. Just like back then, they said that as long as you give them some pretty promise that makes them be able to, pat their little head and go back to things working the way that they want, something as stupid as saying like, "Oh, this represents a share of the real estate in the United States. It worked in Weimar Germany. Why wouldn't it work here?" And so they'll probably do something that's even more complicated, so it's harder for people to understand in what ways it's dumb and doesn't work. And they'll make it a basket of things like some of the oil and some of the food and all those other things that we make here. So it's based on something real, but it'll be done in a way they can still obfuscate exactly how it's backed, or so they can still uh, eventually just print more and everything else. But they will have to transition to something else when it truly dies. There are so many things going on behind the scenes and hints given at different times about possibilities. Some nations' currencies are going to rise dramatically against the dollar. Possibly. There's not too many left. We pretty much invade and destroy any country that tries to not use a central banking model. So all of them are probably gonna go crappy. Well, look at the bond markets around the world. Japan is getting really gnarly. The European bonds, like Japan's starting to look like a third world country with its bond yields spiking and everything. And so that's what I mean when I talk about people fleeing the debt market. It's going to be all of it. Bonds, the fiat, it's all part of the same debt-based system. And it's like super incestuous. Like, oh, Japan owns a trillion of our bond. They own all this money. Like everyone owes money to each other. And it's really just because you constantly have to create new debt. That's how the money is made. Different areas of the world will be using different cryptos. Yeah, they're gonna have, I mean, you see that they're gonna have like corporate ones with these stable coins and also their nonsense. So there's gonna be a lot of weird shit that is not even really possible to probably to understand at all. And that's kind of my point, is that people will just be like, I don't care, what can I go buy food with? What are you gonna pay me with that I can actually go buy food and gas and pay my rent with? And as long as that kind of works, they're gonna accept that system. And it doesn't have to be gold. It's never gonna be, I'm walking down to the corner store with this to physically give to Albertsons to get my chicken um, drumsticks or whatever. So there's going to have to be some sort of currency, and they'll just come up with a bunch of bullshit that'll roll out, and they'll say, this works. And it'll get you food, and that's why will use it. And it'll be crappy and probably, not work very well, but people will still use it. It's not going to have to be based in gold and silver. CLM says Japan's lost decade is beginning to look like a lost century. This is the danger of fiat and central banking. They rode the gravy train too long. Correct? Yeah. And we could very well enter a pretty similar situation of like 30 years of just kind of stagflation while we figure this stuff out. I think it's shaping up to kind of probably be more catastrophic and dramatic than that, simply because being the US dollar, is kind of what underpins this entire system. So when that starts to go, it's all it's all starts to go, and there is nowhere else to flee really. Um, so it's going to get weird. But I mean, we're still probably a few years away from that. We definitely very well could hit 120 tomorrow if you're talking about silver prices. We're at 108, 109 right now, almost 5,100 for gold. It's definitely getting wild. I mean, we're seeing like $5 up days. Wild times, wild times. Like I said, I am. specifically waiting my exit points for my gold and silver, and never for all of it. I'm always going to have a little bit of physical. But once we get into where you have like a Dow 321 for gold, and that these, I think it's like 0.35 or something like that for silver to the S&P and whatever. I don't have them memorized, but I have these written down, and that's when we'll start divesting into other things. It won't necessarily be just stocks. It's just a good point of knowing when silver is so overvalued compared to these other things that it's worth balancing so that when things come back to a more historical valuations, you've gained from it. And like I said, it's entirely possible and nothing wrong for you to just put all your wealth that you want to preserve in gold and silver and just wait for everything to settle out and end up with what you had to begin with and maybe a little more, maybe a little less, whatever, like all the people who say like my gold and silver is for my kids or whatever. Like, fine, that's totally fine. But being that I've seen this coming for many years, and I think I can actually um, use this the pendulum swinging in the other way to my advantage and outsize my gains, not just preserve my wealth, but actually significantly magnify it if we do this right. I'm definitely going to be looking for those opportunities. So that includes probably somewhere around the 200 to $300 range, selling a little bit of gold and silver and or a little bit of silver at least, and if not buying gold with it, maybe buying some. I mean, probably just sitting on it, put in treasuries and wait for the market to to collapse and then buy in, or wait for because there's going to be pullbacks. There's always pullbacks. So far, the pullbacks have been only single digit dollars, like $8, $9 or whatever in silver. But at some point, we'll have one of these like $50 pullbacks or whatever. If it gets up to 150, 200, at some point it'll pull back $50. I don't really try to time that because that's trading. I'm not a trader, but there's definitely nothing wrong with taking profits out, and putting them in other things if you can put them in any undervalued stuff. But I would have to find something that was undervalued. Um, Found treasures is holy crap. I didn't know you were still around. We're still here, baby. Just rocking in the free world. I'm one of the oldest prepping channels on YouTube. There's only a couple that are still around anyway. Obviously, there were ones that were existed before me, but not many of them are still around at all. So we're still here. We're still chugging along in the trenches. But I'm getting a little stuffy, so I'm probably going to call if you guys have any last minute questions. Just remember, stay frosty. Things are going to get weird. I'll probably do a video soon on all the other like domestic disturbance stuff that's going on in the world, but definitely going to be weird. But I appreciate you guys. Congrats to the winners. I will email you guys, and I will continue to give away some, stuff on. Does anyone remember Raw Dog Altard? I don't remember. I don't remember names very well. Do you believe you could find anyone to buy your silver at or near spot right now? I believe so. I haven't tried. I've seen people posting that around. Um, I mean, I bought some silver from spot price from Cutlery Lover when it was $80. That's how I got the latest batch. HTP says a couple tube of Eagles start that sheep flock. Yeah, I mean, when we start getting into that territory where I can buy, a an actual property, like that's the type of things that I'll be looking to because that's why I have this is to maintain purchasing power. But if you're never going to purchase anything, purchasing power doesn't matter. Um, so at some point you're saying, what do I want to do with this? I mean, obviously things like food and just paying your bills and everything throughout economic turmoil is the most important part. But when we get into, if this keeps happening and I have, high six figures, or if we get really crazy, even seven figures in gold and silver, then some decisions have to be made. And I would definitely be looking to buy some sort of property or something, agricultural land, and like I said, maybe even stocks or whatever, just something else to take advantage of that huge run up. But specifically like, yeah, the sheep farm or something somewhere. But that would definitely be, or pay off my current house, stuff like that. But it's definitely gonna be